evening and welcome to the Jim Bohannon Show from Westwood One Radio. We're at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. Online, find us at JimBohannonShow.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Jimbo Talks. Historically, there was developed pretty much in much of the last century the American dream, and it usually included the ownership of your own home. There was a car tossed into that mix as well. But things change, and we're going to be talking about some of the changes tonight with Larry Heller. He is the president of Heller Wealth Management. And Larry, thank you for being on tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
You refer to millennials getting hooked on the drug of renting. What do you mean by that?
Well, millennials these days, they don't have any interest in owning. They're, transient. They're moving around a lot. They're living their lives right now. So the goal of owning a home isn't even in their minds, or at least most of their minds.
By millennials, I mean, there must be some, obviously some of them are buying. I mean, and homes do tend to appreciate. So, I mean, even if you move around a lot, you usually wind up coming out ahead, don't you? I mean,
well, yeah, I mean, now with real estate as high as it is, some people and some of the younger people are not thinking that it's a great time to be buying real estate. A lot of them have graduated with student debt, and they're not really interested in staying in one place. So it's a lot easier to move when you're renting from one place to another place. And a lot of them are not even saving as much money. We're finding, part of that may be, the cashless society that they're used to living in. They're used to living now and not really seeing the cash and putting money away. So they're enjoying life. I have 3 millennial sons out there, and they talk to me and they say, Dad, I don't have any interest in buying a house right now. Maybe that'll change when they're in their 30s, but right now they're not even thinking about buying.
All right. If they're not, then presumably they're making a consumer choice, and this may rebound to hurt the construction industry. But is it necessarily a bad thing? I'll grant you they're not building equity, but they're also not adding to that debt that is largely a student loan debt up to this point. Usually if you buy a house, you do come out ahead, but I mean, this isn't the downfall either of the millennial generation nor the country, is it necessarily?
Well, no, and this may be, the first time, in history they're saying that, next generation may not do as well as the previous generation. So, real estate, maybe we are at a high, and they can't afford to buy that, or they're looking at their account saying, you know what, I can make more money investing elsewhere than I can in the real estate industry, and they don't want to tie up their money just in the real estate. They want to have the freedom to move from one place to the other. So I don't think it's one specific reason. I think when you put all these together, you're finding that they're not buying. And every market is different. The New York City market, the one that I'm closest to, we are seeing some softening in the market, even though interest rates are low. I think we probably have some more to go. But if the next generation is not going to be buying, we may see a correction coming.
Okay. Well, now, let me just quote here from some of what you have written here. Millennials are getting hooked on the drug of renting as investors subsidize the cost of rent to change behaviors, much like Amazon and Uber have done to change paradigms and behaviors related to shopping and cars. It's a very scary situation that will have devastating consequences for the economy and to individual wealth, leading to an uprising due to a wealth gap. A lot in that to cover, but let's go back and looking at this notion of subsidizing the cost of rent to change behavior. Well, maybe some are. I guess landlords would like more people to rent. I suspect contractors would like more people to buy. I'm wondering who these investors are. I mean, investors, of course, don't usually engage in actions designed to change behavior as much as they engage in actions designed to make money.
No, absolutely. But, there's a different mindset from this next generation out there. We're finding quality of life is important, and being able to move from one place to another place, and the freedom of renting versus, buying and staying in one place. I mean, you and I, we were taught as soon as we can save enough money to buy, because renting does not make it worthwhile for you, and you can build some equity. But with real estate prices as high as they are, right now maybe interest rates are keeping that going. But if interest rates do turn around and start to increase, a real estate investment return may not be that great. So will it have a impact on the economy? Probably in different areas it will. It really depends. But there is a shift going on right now with the next generation. The Amazons, the Netflix, things are different now. And maybe renting is the next wave of coming forward, and they're not going to be putting their money in their homes.
Then where are they? Or are they not going to have money? I'm curious. I mean, they do make they make a living. They get paid. So they've got money, and it's not all going to pay off student loan debt. If they're not using it to invest in a home, which is still considered an investment, then what are they using it for?
Well, some of them are using it to enjoy life, and they're looking at return on their money, but they're looking at more instant gratification rather than making sacrifices to save so much for a down payment. And, with homes so high right now, they have to save so much money. I don't know how my kids would be able to afford the home that I'm in. It's going to take them years and years. So they're not really thinking that way. They're thinking, hey, I'm going to move, enjoy life right now, and the money I am saving, I'm going to save it in other different areas other than real estate.
Well, are they saving at all? I mean, that's a good question. I'm just curious. I mean, it can't all just be eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. I mean, there has to be some fiscal responsibility, particularly for those who experienced the downturn of 08 just 11 years ago. I mean, there has to be a little bit of fiscal responsibility, I would think, somewhere in there. So if it's not real estate, where is it?
Well, it's the stock market. It's cryptocurrency. It's different areas.
Really, cryptocurrency?
Yeah, talk to my kids about that. So they're again we're generalizing, but they're not looking at real estate as a great return versus renting right now.
Well, let me ask you about the cryptocurrency since you brought them up. I'll grant you that I never fully grasped the importance of that, and I must confess that I've read about them and all the rest of that, bitcoins and all the rest of this, and I gathered that they've stubbed their toes along the way, and I had pretty much relegated that in my mind to rapidly becoming a passing fad. Is that really something that has taken hold? That's going to stay around for a while?
Well, that's yet to be seen. I know when it first came out, I thought the same thing, and I told my kids that this is going to be a fad. It can't continue. Of course, we know that the bubble popped for a little bit, and we're back down. But they still believe in that, and they believe in different types of ways of making money. And I don't think they've all given up on the cryptocurrency. And maybe it is something of the future. Who knows?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm not sure that if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I guess if enough people believe in it, I mean, let's face it. If enough people believe that there's intrinsic worth in laminated dog droppings, then I guess we could go from gold to laminated dog droppings as our standard of wealth. Not that I suspect that'll happen, but again, we know what you're talking about here. Larry Heller, our guest, he is president of Heller Wealth Management, and he is concerned about the trend of millennials, as he puts it, getting hooked on the drug of renting. I want to come in and look at some of the things that he says can lead from a scary situation when we come back. 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to the Jim Bohannon Show at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. As we talk with Larry Heller, he is the president of Heller Wealth Management. He knows something about this money thing, and he is concerned at what he sees as millennials getting hooked on the drug of renting. He calls it a very scary situation, which will have devastating consequences for the economy and of individual wealth, leading to an uprising due to a wealth gap. The first thing I would note about your conclusion is that we already have a wealth gap, and it has been growing for quite some time, and it hasn't led to an uprising yet. I'm not certainly in favor of a wealth gap, but I'm not sure that many people are getting that worked up about it, are they?
No, I don't think that there's really a big uprising that people, as of right now. But as we continue to go and the new generation comes in and is not purchasing homes and not saving for retirement, you may see an impact in the economy.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the notion of a wealth gap being caused by this, it would, I guess, tend to imply that what millennials as a group are poorer than boomers and others. I mean, I know that there's been some wage stagnation in the country, but as a group, I wasn't aware that there was a significant drop in income from the boomers down to the millennials. Is there?
Well, I think there is. I think a lot of the millennials out there are not taking some of these positions and these jobs out there, and they're looking at quality of life and enjoying life and not saving as much as they have been. So this will lead to a wealth gap along the way. Now, of course, we're generalizing. That's not going to be all millennials, but a group as the whole, they're looking at, now, me now, enjoying life now, being happy now, not what's going to happen in the future and how do I have to make sure I accumulate enough wealth, to live or to buy a home. They're looking at today, and they're looking at, being happy today.
That certainly sounds very much like the old parable of the ant and the grasshopper. Are these again, it's hard for me to imagine that millennials aren't at least aware of the problems that the economy can bring about, and that they wouldn't be maybe pushed in the direction of being prudent and moderate just by having lived through the drop of the crash of 2008. Granted, it wasn't the Great Depression, but it hurt a lot of people, and I gather that millennials would be high on the list. It's amazing to me that they wouldn't have learned a valuable lesson from that.
Well, I think they learned a lesson that the market can come down and there can be corrections, but they're not looking forward 10 years, 20 years in general, like the previous generations of the past have done. They're more concerned about today, and they're more concerned about, quality of life and how that's going to impact them. Will they be saving enough money as they move out of, the 20s and into, their older years and turning around? Sure. But right now, the millennials are not as a whole. They're looking at, like I said before, enjoying life and quality of life, and not as important to them, to see for, years and years down the road.
Yeah, well, I don't know that Mom and Dad's basement will be there forever. Neil in Colchester, Vermont calls in to speak with our guest, Larry Heller, the president of Heller Wealth Management. Good evening, Neil.
Good evening, gentlemen. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Now and today is just today. They can't. You have to think about the future. I bought a trailer 30 years ago. I don't make a lot of money, but I've been able to acquire a certain amount of wealth in precious metals.
Uh-huh.
And at least I have the knowledge, and through listening to the talk radio,
Right.
I'm ready for the future, you know?
Let me ask your age, if I could, Neil. I think that might be instructive given the topic at hand. How old are you?
56.
56, okay. I'm not sure what the parameters of the boomers are, but I guess that's...
I'm way behind, yeah.
You're way behind, exactly. All right. Thoughts, Larry Heller?
Yeah, again, it's not that I don't agree with that philosophy. I mean, I think you should be putting away, two of my kids actually just started, and we talking about 401k plans and putting away into the 401k plan. So I think they should be putting away and saving for the future and saving for the rainy day. But it's definitely hard for our generation to maybe understand what they're going through and what's important to them. Well, will that get through to them? Hopefully, and hopefully they'll save enough. But we're just seeing it's not the case right now.
Interesting. All right. Thanks, Neil. Appreciate your thoughts and your call, your listenership. 1-866-50-JIMBO, our number, 1-866-505-4626. What kind of things are being done to subsidize the cost of rent? Are there major government programs out there that do that? I must confess that I've been in home ownership for so many years that if there are programs to subsidize the cost of rent, I wasn't aware of them.
Yeah, I'm not really sure that rent's getting subsidized by the government here. But again, in supply and demand depends upon what part of the country that you're in. New York rents are still high, but they're low compared to the entry point of buying in New York City. So they're much easier to rent than it is to buy. So the millennials will have a tough time, buying and saving for that down payment.
Although, of course, in New York City, I mean, it's not easy to do anything. I mean, you're going to buy. I mean, if you own property in New York City on the island of Manhattan, anyway, you're probably by definition a millionaire. And in terms of renting, you're spending $3,000 a month to live in a closet somewhere. I mean, even if I ever worked in New York City, and I would say very gratefully that I never had to, but I sure as hell wouldn't live in New York City. I'd live probably in New Jersey and hope that I could find some place that wasn't off the charts in terms of expense.
Yes, but again, people want the quality of life. They want to live where they're happy, and New York City is a great place to live, and they're willing to, pay the rents that they are to be able to do that. They also want to.
All right. I mean, I will accept that as a viewpoint. I personally have always felt that there was a lot of merit in one of the great cliches of our time, New York City, a nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. And I suppose over the years, I probably in 2 and 3 and 4 day shots at a time, I've probably spent 3 or 4 months in New York City and never ever felt the desire to, quote, live there. But as I say, it's kind of a nice place to visit. Anyway, I want to come back. Go ahead briefly. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying I think if you talk to a lot of people out there, they would die to be able to live in New York City. The entry points for either renting or owning. And being a New Yorker, it's to me it's the greatest city in the world. Yeah. So I love living in New York City and being there.
Of course, you can't afford it. We'll come back. We'll talk some more about that. Of course, most millennials aren't in New York City. We'll be back in a moment. In the area. But be that as it may, of course, for most millennials, New York City is not part of the equation. Greater New York amounts to probably, 5 or 6% of the population of the country, something like that. So most millennials are living elsewhere. Do these patterns against owning and in favor of renting seem to vary by the cost of living in a given part of the country, Larry?
Oh, sure. Sure they are. I mean, New York. There are other cities that are expensive. San Francisco. LA. So it varies from, state to state and, different parts of the country. It's still also the entry point for ownership is going to be a lot lower. So you may see more millennials buying when the ownership is there. But it's not just the cost. They want the freedom. For example, I have a nephew in his late 20s, and he just quit his job and with his girlfriend decided to travel the world for a year, one whole year. And I don't think anybody in my generation, and I don't know about you, Jim, in your generation, would quit their job in their 20s to take a year off, to take all their savings, and to go around the world. But what a great experience that is.
Well, I'm sure it's a great experience. I would call it blowing your money. I mean, I've never in my life had the economic wherewithal to say I am so economically secure that I can just blow it all away. We'll just forget about career and all the other considerations. Let's travel the world. I mean, honestly, if you in fact are genuinely wealthy, and by that I mean upper 10th of 1% wealthy, well then, hey, you can afford to do pretty much whatever you want. I've gone from being lower middle class to upper middle class, and never would such a thought even occur to me, and I must confess that the notion, and I gather you're talking about people who are not necessarily all that wealthy. Honest to goodness, it sounds to me deeply irresponsible. Maybe I don't know the circumstances well enough. You tell me.
Yeah, you and I may say it's irresponsible, but they may say that's their life and they want to enjoy life. And he's not the only one. I've heard that today, in this day and age. That's what they think. That's why it's hard for maybe our generation to relate to that, even in the work field. We know that some of the bosses out there have problems relating to the millennials and how they think, because they think so different. You may say it's irresponsible. They may say, hey, you're not enjoying life when you can. Who's to say that we're right and they're wrong?
Well, I'll put it this way. I am, if you plan on losing your little gamble and then suddenly decide that public assistance is your way out of it after you dumped your career, my response is, screw you, honestly. I mean, I probably won't be able to back that up because some ultra-generous politician will manage to take my tax money from me anyway and subsidize this kind of irresponsible behavior. But I'm the person to say that it is, unless you just really are independent and on your own. But if you think that you should go out and take a flyer like this on life and then assume that the rest of us are going to bail you out if it doesn't work out, again, screw you. That is my, with emphasis, viewpoint of such people. Seriously. I mean, this is, the idea that we can do this and somehow there's this vast safety net out there that'll take care of them and their kids and all the rest of that. I don't know where it is unless, again, they are independently wealthy.
Well, I'm not saying they're going to go on to public assistance. They'll come back and they'll get another job, and then they'll rent some more, and they're not looking for that right now. And that's what the next age group is doing. They're not just the millennials. Now you got the Generation Zs, coming forward. I think they're following in their footsteps.
Are they having kids? And does having children influence the extent to which they're prepared to do this? In other words, don't worry about the kids' college. They can behave the way we are.
No, I think it starts to change once they start to look at a family, and they're looking at, that now there's things that they need to take care of. They need to take care of children. But in that particular, sense that maybe they are looking to, buy something that would be affordable. Yeah. So maybe they aren't living in the big cities, or they're moving out to New Jersey, as you would say, where they can afford something in a moderate price, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to know that something can jerk them back to reality would be my my honest take on this. But again, yes, that's from my perspective. This is James who calls in from Riverside, New York on the Bohannon Show with our guest, Larry Heller. He is the president of Heller Wealth Management. Good evening, James.
Yes. What I don't understand is that 1 in 3 adults over the age of 55 have nothing saved for retirement. And you talk about people that are not buying houses as an investment, but I live on Long Island, New York, outside of New York City, and the taxes are really high. My friend bought a house for $250,000. He pays $6,000 a year. After 50 years, he's got nothing left in it. There's no equity. There's nothing. This is what the millennials are seeing. And I live a few miles from the largest house in the United States. And, you know, some of these rich people, this one guy has a house that covers 63 acres. Look it up. It's inside New York.
That obviously is rather atypical. Did I hear you refer to someone who owned a house for 50 years and got nothing out of it?
No, I'm saying that he's owned it for 20 years and pays $6,000 a year, and he pays $250,000. So another 20 years, he'll have almost nothing because it all went into taxes. What does he have left?
You're talking about the tax burden, not the appreciation of real estate. All right, Mr. Heller, thoughts for James in Riverside, New York.
Yeah, hi, James. So I'm actually in Long Island as we speak right now, so I'm your neighbor. But yes, I think the millennials are seeing that. They're seeing, you know, the cost of taxes and obviously the cost of a mortgage. Think about what they have to put down in Long Island if they wanted to buy a home, and what type of mortgage that they would have to do, to pay this off over time. And they're looking and saying, hey, we're not going to get the appreciation that has come in the past 20 or 30 years, and I'll be able to do better elsewhere. So that's what they're seeing out there. So I kind of agree with you, Jim.
Yeah. All right. Interesting points. More calls to come at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. And yes, before we part company with Larry Heller, we will certainly tap into his knowledge as president of Heller Wealth Management about his thoughts about the economy and where it's headed. 1-866-50-JIMBO. And we'll be back with more in a moment. Welcome back to the Jim Bohannon Show with our guest, Larry Heller, the president of Heller Wealth Management. He says that millennials, more and more, are moving away from buying homes and into renting, and he finds this a problem that could lead to consequences for the entire economy down the road. 1-866-50-JIMBO, and here's Pat in northern Michigan now. Hello, Pat.
Hello, Jimbo. First off, I'd like to say that I thank God for giving me the opportunity to try to be a good steward of my land. And Will Rogers, in his wisdom, he says, buy land, they ain't making any more.
He did say that.
Off my forest, I pull, I don't know, when I'm pressed, if I want to, I can pull $3,000 just cutting brush for Christmas. I save $3,000 every year cutting my own firewood off my property. I grow my crops. Okay. I can hunt deer. I mean, the blessings are so abundant and imperceivable to somebody who lives in the city.
Well, I can understand what you're saying. I'm not sure if you have any comment, Larry. Please go ahead. I'm not sure quite how that idyllic, bucolic circumstance necessarily relates to our topic at hand, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I can't relate to living on the land like you're doing there, Pat. But obviously, owning something, you're able to use that and be able to support yourself with that. So I could definitely appreciate that. I don't know if our millennials will, but I can appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Michelle in Bourbonnais, Illinois. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
I just wanted to make a comment about some trends that I've been noticing.
Okay.
When you're talking about what millennials are doing, they're also looking to downsize, like in tiny houses, They're more eco-minded, you know what I'm saying? So they're looking to live like off-grid and like idyllic places that are beautiful. Like this other man was saying, you know, if you own your own little spot. I've seen earth ships as a trend. I've seen other ways, alternative ways of making money. They have nomads that have YouTube channels and they do other things. So I don't think it's irresponsible if you have a plan on how you're going to sustain yourself. And if you have something invested, you know, you've got your money working for you. You know what I'm saying?
As long as you've got it invested in some way, shape, or form, yes. If you're just blowing it away without any thoughts to the future, that wouldn't, to my mind, be a responsible bit of behavior. But comments from Larry Heller.
You know, you make a good point about them being very green and environmentally, you know, conscious out there, and they're looking for ways to save the economy, to save the country, and to save the environment out there. So there are ways of making money that way, but then they're not looking for right now for the next big mansion, mega mansion out there. It's not important to them. The environment's more important to them.
Well, it's fine, you know, if they don't want a mega mansion, obviously, but they should be worrying about taking care of themselves. Clearly, that is the main thing. Again, if they want to do that in an extremely green way, well, bless their hearts. This is Dave in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Hello, Dave.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Yeah, two quick points on this is one, and I think specifically of my grandkids, a couple of them, in the renting thing, is in renting, the landlord's responsible for everything. He's got to bear all the burdens my oldest grandchild's getting ready to go to she's getting ready to move to go to graduate school, and so she's not really concerned about a permanent residence right now. I think when she's done with all the schooling, that'll change. But in rental, you know, they pay their rent, the landlord takes care of whatever's broken and stuff. But a lot of her friends, you know, they couldn't change a light bulb on their own if they had to. Now, my grandkids don't have necessarily that degree of a problem, but a lot of them, they don't know how to do things on their own. They don't care to learn how to do things on their own, and they'll actually pay a little extra to have somebody else do it. And then on the long-term retirement, when Obama came out with that MIRA idea, a lot of the people in their generation just think that they didn't understand that at all, and they think that the government is just going to come up with a retirement plan for that generation. The millennials think that, you know, and I told them, I said, well, you got to build it out of something, and if they do, I don't know if you remember that he formed a committee out of Department of Labor and somebody else, and anyhow, he was looking at how he could take away 401ks and IRAs and stuff and start this government retirement program. And I said, you know, they're going to mandate that you put X amount of your pay into this retirement account, and then they're going to determine, you know, to get rid of Social Security, and then they're going to determine how much you get and when you get it. And a lot of them think, well, okay, but if they don't, who will? You will. You got to take care of yourself. And that's just not the mindset. And I think that in the last 30, 40 years, there has been a disintegration of the, you know, taking care of yourself and the value of what you store away becoming worth something in the future.
All right, let's let our guest comment about that, Mr. Heller.
Well, the first comment you made about, and they don't care to learn about taking care of them something. And I agree with that. They want to be able to pay their rent and not have to worry about that. They're not worried about home ownership. They don't want to be home ownership, but they have to worry about that. You know, as far as, you know, forced savings, I don't think, you know, as a generalist that they're really worried or all looking to the government to subsidize them. I think, you know, some people, they're just living from paycheck to paycheck and they're not really worrying about that in the future. Unfortunately, if they don't, the government may have to subsidize, but Social Security is not going to be there.
Obviously, I mean, if you're living paycheck to paycheck and a catastrophe strikes your family, if the breadwinner is crippled in a car wreck, or you develop some kind of medical situation that costs $10,000 a month to keep you alive. Sure, we were living paycheck to paycheck by choice, but the world will bail us out. I mean, this assumes that your life is going to be totally untouched by tragedy. And again, not very realistic, unless, of course, you're prepared to be a sponge off of everybody else. We've got more to come with our guest, Larry Heller. He's the president of Heller Wealth Management. We'll be back in just a moment. Glad you're with us on the Jim Bohannon Show at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. If you're online, we'll get to your calls as Larry Heller of Heller Wealth Management has graciously agreed to extend into the next hour a section. So let us go now. How interesting. Let us go. If you could, at your end, please poke up Maggie in Alexandria, Virginia. I would be very grateful for that. Can you do that? Hello, Maggie.
Hello.
Hello, Maggie.
Thank you for my call. Hello.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. May I have a couple of comments from ground level perspective? Okay. First, there has been no job security since about 1981 or 82. This affects everything else. Second, many otherwise formerly good-paying jobs and occupations have been either outsourced or given here to foreign workers for lower wages or a lot lower wages. Third, house prices and rents have been going up and up, and they're now through the roof. Around here, $500,000 for a little house is considered cheap, and cheap rent is considered $1,600 a month for a little apartment.
Well, again, you live in Alexandria, Virginia, which is a pricey suburb of the nation's capital. So, I mean, that certainly is not; those are not representative prices of the whole country. Nor has there been no job security. There are people out there who've been in the same job for 40 years. So we don't want to get carried away with hyperbole. But these are trends that can be noted, not in the extreme, perhaps. But go ahead, Maggie.
It might be nice if everybody was available. I mean, allow this type of job security, depending. Well, maybe like you say, maybe it depends what job they get into or can get into. Maybe. But this is like this turmoil going on. On a certain level. Millennials are probably just. Well, they're probably just glad they have some. They're not homeless. Or they have a little tiny house.
Some are.
You see.
Sure.
But it might be nice if house prices and rents were lowered a bit. Maybe that's not possible, right? This state here, I guess it wouldn't happen.
These are things which vary greatly from area to area. Again, your experiences in Alexandria, Virginia, one of the inner suburbs of the nation's capital, that's got to put rents, I would think, there. There are 328 million of us in this country. I would have to think that rents in Alexandria, Virginia, are in the top 5% of the whole country. Larry Heller.
Oh, absolutely. She mentioned something about, no job security, and it kind of triggered a thought that millennials right now, they go to a job and they're already thinking about their next job. They have no qualms about moving from one to another, whereby the previous generation wouldn't even think about that. They would worry about how it would look on their resume and how long they needed to stay. They're job hopping from one to the other.
Well, of course, we hear about the gig economy. I suppose that we are maybe this is a reflection of people who exist primarily in the gig economy, where instead of having a career with 2 or 3 jobs max, you may have a 2 or 3 careers and maybe 20 or 50 jobs. Right? About 20 seconds to respond here.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at a resume today, you're seeing a lot more jobs out there. You're seeing them going from one to the other, where they're, instead of staying in one career for long periods of time.
All right. Stay on the line and we'll speak off air. And again, We will continue our discussion in the next hour, so stick around, and we'll keep talking with Larry Heller, the president of Heller Wealth Management, at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. I'm Jim Bohannon, and of course we come to you weeknights right here at West. Is Larry Heller, the president of Heller Wealth Management. They're online at hellerwealth.com. And we've been talking a bit about some of the economic habits of millennials. And let's take a call from Dimitri in New Haven, Connecticut. And Dimitri, welcome to the Jim Bohannon Show. You're on the air. Or I guess Dimitri's not with us. All right. We'll go to Joan in Sebring, Florida next. Hello, Joan.
Hi.
Hi.
I just have a couple things to say. My grandson actually he's got his bachelor's degree now, and he went into the medical field. He is going on further, but
by medical field, are you talking about what? Medical doctor, nurse, pharmacy? What kind of work?
Physical therapist. When he was a junior in high school, you could be a physical therapist with a doctor's degree after 5 years.
Oh, okay.
They extended it to 8 years now.
Without getting too deep into the subject, but what about your grandson?
But that debt is on his back, and his
How much debt are you talking about?
To be a doctor, physical therapist.
Well, you talked about debt on his back. I was just curious. How much debt are we talking about?
It's going to be a lot.
Oh, well,
I mean, there's student loans and everything. So this gentleman is talking about when they finish school that they can go on a trip. He can't go on a trip anywhere. He's going to be paying that debt off. And between him and his girlfriend, she went into education, so she's going to be a school teacher. But these people have a lot of debt on their hands. And, and I told him you always have to eventually buy something and build equity.
What was his reaction to your advice?
He believes it.
Okay. Well, I would like our guest to respond to you here. So go ahead, if you would, Larry.
Yeah, so student debt is definitely a problem. It's one of the reasons why I'm talking about that they're renting today. Now, I'm glad that he's able to see or look at the possibility of equity and ownership there. But think about all the people that have the student debt. What about all the medical professions, the doctors out there? How can they afford to buy because of the student debt? Another one of those reasons why they're renting more.
Yeah, certainly raises pretty serious questions. I think we have Dimitri in New Haven, Connecticut. Dimitri?
Yeah, Jim, thank you for having me.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm a millennial myself, and the way that you guys speak about us is a bit pessimistic, but I understand why. But I think that, to be honest, you'd be surprised by how many of us what your guest talks about, this like hedonism that we supposedly have. You would be surprised by how many of us actually see that, and we just turn it around. And for example, for myself, I see that, I realize that I'm not in the market for a house right now, and I would never rent. It's just too much money. I'd rather live with my parents, acquire wealth. I have a job right now. I have a full-time job, second shift. I've been there for 2 years. I'd rather live with my parents.
Let me ask you, how old are you, and how do your parents feel about that, Dimitri?
Yeah, I'm 26 years old. My parents love to have me. Yep.
You think they still will at 36? Or do you plan on being gone by then?
I plan on being married and having kids by then and living with them.
Oh, okay. Very good. All right. Advice. We have a millennial right here for you, Larry. Please offer some thoughts to Dimitri.
Well, I mean, the first thing is right now, at 26, he's not able to to buy something. So, he is staying at home and saving, and that's great. Again, can't generalize with all millennials, but not all millennials are willing to live in their parents' homes at 26 in order to save. Most of them want to be out. So that's great, and hopefully you'll accumulate enough money to be able to buy something down the road.
Yeah. One would certainly hope so. Good luck to you, Dimitri, and we appreciate your listenership and your call as we talk to Harvey in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Hello, Harvey.
Hi, Jim. Have you ever heard of Agenda 21?
Agenda 21. I haven't, and I'm sure many in our audience have not. So since the audience needs to know, what is it?
If you go on the Internet,
Well, we're not going on it right now. Give us a brief synopsis of what Agenda 21 is.
Basically, the government wants to shove everybody in apartments. And
why would the government want to do that? Certainly local governments don't, because apartment renters don't pay property tax.
Well, I wouldn't think so, but Bush signed a soft with the UN.
Trust me, the United Nations has very little to do about property evaluation. All right, 1-866-50-JIMBO. With the time we have left with Larry Heller, I have to ask him a bit about the direction of the economy. The general feeling, I suppose, is that we've been putting along pretty well. Unemployment's down and the stock market's up, but that there could be clouds on the horizon in 2020. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, there are. I mean, people are getting concerned about that. We have some clients that are, of course, without going into great detail on the political unrest, are concerned about what's going on with there and how that's going to impact the economy. But interesting, I had breakfast with a labor attorney last week, and he actually said that we're coming up to a recession, and he's the first one to know. And I asked him, why are you the first one to know? He said, because they're getting tons of calls right now from their clients, making sure that they're protected because they're laying off people. So he said when he starts getting these calls, and it's not just from one industry, from multiple industries, that they're laying people off, he's the first one that sees that a recession is coming.
Interesting. That doesn't seem to be reflected in the unemployment figures.
Not yet, but he's maybe one step ahead, that they're having the conversations on how to protect themselves when they go ahead and start these layoffs. Well, so that was interesting. Yeah. That was an interesting sign to hear from somebody really with his boots on the ground.
It is interesting, absolutely. Although, as I say, certainly if that were widespread and happening right now, the unemployment numbers would not be at record lows. Assuming that we're heading for some economic difficulty, what is your feeling about the best safe haven, if you will? Are we talking the stock market, which over time always seems to yield money? Are we talking precious metals? Are we talking bonds? Where would you advise people go?
Well, I'm traditionally an asset allocator and diversification, so you should be in all areas. The one thing that we're questioning right now for those that need money in the short period of time, to put that into cash or short-term bonds. So if you're going to need that in the next year or two, not to have that in the stock market, and the money should be in the stock market, should be there for a long term, because there could be a pullback. Whether it's a correction or not, there is a pullback. Historically, the S&P is down 7 out of 10 years. So maybe we are coming to a little bit of a dip somewhere. So you should be diversified in both in bonds and in stocks, and have enough in cash to protect yourself for the next couple of years.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you, Larry Heller, for being with us.
Thank you, Jim, for having me.